fiction, there is a trope that is commonly used to bring up a question of morality. Are the actions of a character necessarily right or wrong? Are particular actions justified? And if so, for what reason? There are shows out there that spend their entire existence building up an answer to one of these questions. There are others that answer it fairly quickly, and then spend the rest of the show letting you witness through a series of consequences why that choice may or may not have been the right one. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, an anime wherein the main characters are terrorists. Created and directed by fan-favorite Shinichiro Watanabe, and animated by production studio MAPPA, Terror in Residence, or, if you prefer, Zankyou no Terror. Regardless, let's jam.
世界から弾き出された途方もなく細い針の上にいたバランスを取る指の先が君に触れた一人じゃない
At a time I assume to be present-day Japan, the city of Tokyo becomes the victim of a terrorist attack. An attack that shuts down power to the city temporarily and destroys the top of one of the city's more predominant skyscrapers. There are two things quite interesting about this attack. First, unlike what you would expect, there are no fatalities caused by it, as the building's fire alarm was conveniently activated before the bombs, allowing anyone inside time to evacuate. And second, that we, the viewers, witness the attack from the perspective of the two boys responsible for it. Referring to themselves as Sphinx, the two elude capture from the authorities who desperately try to identify the two and bring them in before anybody gets killed. Not that Sphinx makes it easy for them. Unlike the traditional terrorists who set off bombs willy-nilly, they announce their attacks publicly beforehand, with complicated riddles outlining locations for the bombs. So the police have riddles to figure out, Sphinx has bombs to set, and a young girl willingly or perhaps unwillingly becomes an accomplice to the youngest terrorists in Japan. The duo known as Sphinx, besides being part of the protagonist lineup, spend a great deal of time dancing around in a shroud of mystery. We know they have the ability to create and set bombs, to plan their attacks, and also have the smarts to completely fool the police for quite a while, but it's not shown initially how they got that knowledge, and it's never truly confirmed how they got the cash for what they do either. While they do both have names, I will excuse myself from poorly attempting to pronounce them. They prefer, instead, to call each other by the codenames of 9 and 12, and it takes a while until we find out why. You spend a lot of time wondering whether or not you're supposed to empathize with these characters, regardless of their actions. And there is one thing that greatly helps with this. They don't kill people. Their plans are so intricately set up that no one dies. And when we are talking about the surprise demolition of parts of buildings, that's a wondrous feat. If it wasn't for that, though, this wouldn't work. Without that, we would think that our main characters are deplorable, regardless of whatever reasons they may have. But with that moral barrier in place, everything changes. We don't need to know their reasoning because now we believe that somehow their actions are justified. Otherwise, why would they bother trying to save people? Now, with the police, we have the former ace detective Shibazaki delegated to the archives department because of some past blunder of digging too deep. He gets assigned to the Sphinx case because A, he's honestly the department's best detective, and B, he's the only one smart enough to figure out the riddles that Sphinx has given them. The only real problem I had with Shibazaki is how, at times, it felt like his backstory and the eventual tie-in to it seemed rather forced and unnecessary. Ultimately, though, his plot becomes stale in the second half due to plot developments, which leads to, just showing how inept and downright stupid the higher-ups in both the police force and the government are, but I digress. Shibazaki himself was a solid character. Lastly, I want to mention the girl, Mishima. She unwillingly gets roped into this whole thing when she witnesses 9 during the very first attack, and instead of killing her to protect the duo's secret, he convinces her that she is now their accomplice, which works because she is a very emotional person and was nearly at a breaking point as it was. Her home life is not much to speak of. Her mother is scarily overprotective, to the point of almost reaching domestic violence. At school, she's not necessarily popular at all, and a lot of the times gets bullied by her classmates. My problem with her is that she is a massive danger magnet. She's not very confident in herself and what she does, which leads her to making whatever situation she finds herself in worse. She constantly beats herself up for not being able to do anything right, and the show is all like, yeah, you don't do anything right. How about you keep doing that? And it just bugged me to no end. Like, can we at least give her one semblance of a break? Please? Sheesh. The animation for the majority of the series is, quite frankly, amazing. A lot of the shading and coloring seems to be done in a way that makes everything look as realistic as possible. Not on the level of, say, Garden of Words, however, but considering this is not a feature-length film, it's still really quality stuff here. The only problem I had on occasion with the show was just how dark some of the scenes were, to the point where I honestly considered turning up the brightness on my monitor just to see what was going on. The same thing happened on my television as well, so it's not just my monitor's problem. So with any luck, they might fix things like that in the Blu-ray release. Speaking of Blu-ray, when it actually comes out on Blu-ray, that is how I'm going to pick it up, because I think to watch this show any other way wouldn't be doing it justice. What we don't need to wait for, however, is the soundtrack. Contrary to the normal way of doing things, the first half of the soundtrack was released a day before episode 1 aired, which is weird. Normally the soundtrack doesn't come out until like weeks after the show has finished airing. So for it to come out before the show, that's just amazing to me. And what's even better, the soundtrack is amazing. This soundtrack is the first time in a long time that I've listened to a soundtrack from start to finish and not just picked my way through the songs that I liked. Though honestly, I should not be surprised considering it was composed by Yoko Kanno, and the last couple of soundtracks that I'd listened to from beginning to end were also done by her. Fancy that. Like, I don't always like her music, some of it is hit or miss for me, but I will stand by my opinion of her when I say that when she hits it out of the park, it goes flying. Like, just the piano, the bass track, the vocals, that's so beautiful. While it is true that I have yet to watch absolutely everything from the summer anime season in 2014, and there are still a good number of months left until the end of the year, I could probably say with pretty good confidence that Terror in Resonance, or Zankyou no Terror, is probably the best anime of the year. And honestly, I was worried before I actually started watching this series. Its tone and themes are relatively dark, and when you look at the other works by Watanabe, things like Bebop and Shampoo, you see that darkness there. But those shows also have moments of lightness in either the plot or the characters to balance things out. Terror doesn't really have that counterbalance. It's dark in tone, and it likes to stay that way for more or less the entire show. But to me, it works just because of how it's presented. You aren't filled with depression as the plot unfolds, but excitement. You want Sphinx to succeed because you want to know their motivations. You want Shibazaki to succeed because what he wants is, for lack of a better word, true justice. And finally, you just want Mishima to be happy. Truly, seriously happy. Because the amount she has to deal with is more than any person should have to. But with everything in mind, I have meticulously calculated values for the categories of story, characters, animation, sound, and my own personal enjoyment, which after doing my best to not make any correlation between this series and 9/11 leaves me awarding Terror in Resonance with an overall score of 8.1 out of 10, and recommending that you buy this series when it inevitably comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. This is because at the time of this video you can't buy it yet. However, considering the series has been licensed by Funimation Entertainment and is available on their website for legal streaming, I feel it's safe to say that very soon we will have a release coming from them. And good thing too. For alternate anime recommendations, I point you towards Psycho-Pass, for a series that is also very well animated and to a larger degree follows the format of the police procedural, even if it's a bit more futuristic. Also, for something a bit more contemporary, Eden of the East. While a bit more lighthearted and a similar mystery surrounding the lead protagonist, it makes for a great series. Just don't ask me anything about the sequel films. Yeah. So hopefully between those, you should find something to your liking. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider checking out my Patreon page and signing up for a monthly donation. Very special thanks to Tyler Morse, Samuel R., and Cody Nelson for donating already. You guys are absolutely amazing. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen and others, stay frosty.